Morning, everyone. Welcome to the Tuesday, 9 a.m. VOCC meeting. We will start if you want to rise for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. And, as usual, I'll ask Mr. Mortensen to review the minutes.
As usual, I did review the minutes of the activities last week and I moved to approve them. Approve those minutes, that is.
Any questions on the minutes? See none, see no hands. Call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Also vote aye. Thank you. We'll go through the consent agenda. I will make one mention this morning. We have a closed public hearing at 9:45, so I'll be respectful of that time. We'll see how we work through. But just be aware, we do have that scheduled at 9:45. Consent agenda, we have a call for hearing on October 3rd, 2023 at 9 a.m. Looks like we're a budget amendment and we're revising a fund name from the drug task force to the sheriff CRT, and I don't know what all the letters stand for, but it's a name change on that fund. Agreement contracts, bid awards. First two are contracts we've executed that have been discussed in previous workshops. One was with Hamer Electric, who takes care of our electrical needs at the Tennant Way Landfill. We have responsibilities as we shut that down. And then Northwest Control Company for as needed HVAC maintenance and repair services. And both those have not to exceed dollar amounts. Historically, we haven't, if I remember correctly, we haven't reached those limits, but we've put them in there. As we had, I think a couple of weeks ago, maybe last week, hard to remember. Public Works has a couple other agreements for appraisal services for things that they may need as they conduct their business. That's 4 and 5, one with Portland Valuation and one with Appraisal and Consulting Group. We've had through various Granges, we had funds available to help some of the Granges through COVID-19 impact, and Rose Valley Grange was one of those in amount of $74.75. We have a contract with HELMSMAN Management Services LLC. They do our workers' comp administration for us. And then 3 resolutions, as you've seen stuff coming in the past weeks. It's budget time, and a lot of the Diking districts have been submitting budgets, and these are 3 resolutions to approve budgets for District number 3, District 15, and District number 1. Letters and correspondence. We have a letter from the Washington State Department of Ecology regarding our duty they're notifying us we need to reapply for our Western Washington Phase 2 stormwater general permit. We got a letter from Teamsters Union number 58, opening up labor agreement. And we got another from another Silver Lake Flood Control District. We got a preliminary budget estimate that came in. And then we have an affidavit that all of our business has been posted as of August 2023. Vouchers in the amount of $2,684,000. $20.62. That's the consent agenda. Questions on that? Yeah.
Just while we wait, the call for public hearing. That's at 9 o'clock on a Tuesday. What should I infer from that? That we won't have the regular meeting at that time?
I think it's supposed to be 9:30. I'll look at that.
Oh, it should be
Well,
I
9:30?
think that's a typo.
Yeah, hold on.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Good catch. Douglas.
This concerns what Commissioner Mortensen just alluded to. The hearing considering amendments to the 2023 county budget, specifically the Sheriff's Drug Task Force. And my concern is the third paragraph of your resolution, the whereas. An additional amendment to rename the Drug Task Force 16001 has sheriffs, and then we have the letters. As there is no longer an agreement in place covering the activities and funding provided by other counties, but the activities will still be conducted as a unit of the Sheriff's Department named at least one of the acronyms, CRT, Crime Reduction Team. Now, I'm concerned about funding provided by other counties. Who are these other counties and what funds did they provide requiring this resolution amending the 2023 budget? Do you know?
I don't know.
That's the reason it's a hearing.
Yeah,
Yeah, that'll be gone over that.
So the hearing, that's going to be October 3rd at 9:30 a.m. And then we'll know who the other counties are and what funding they used to provide, correct?
right, correct.
Okay.
We may be, it sounds like that 9 a.m. may be an incorrect time. It may be 9:30, but we're gonna double check that.
It does say 9:30 in your resolution.
Okay,
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 that's the only question I have.
okay.
Mr. Chairman, I did want to mention that under the resolutions 8, 9, and 10, we're certifying the budgets of those Diking districts. And I think you said we approve them. They have their own boards of directors that do the approval, but the state law allows that. We have to certify that they've done it.
Gotcha. Perfect.
Ooh, I have. You certify something, I have to say, I saw all of this is the right place. We don't do that, do we? I mean, does a commissioner ever do that?
We have those documents in the agenda that.
Right, we
so
have the
look at that, so-
documents and we can say, we can approve of the documents, but we cannot certify that they represent the truth.
And again, my understanding is what we certify is that we have received the documents. We're not certified, we're not auditing them, which is, that's a different function. But we're just complying with the
Yeah.
state law that says they've got to report this material to us.
Actually, I wonder if our auditor is on, because I've had this discussion with our auditor and
Looks like the auditor's office is on.
actually in the area agency,
Susan Eugenis could probably help answer that too. She's the engineer for them.
there's
There's
Carolyn.
Carol.
Good morning. So I was being transferred over. I believe the question is the verbiage on the I certify. Yeah, so we are working right now with the state auditor's office. I'm trying to find alternative language. I know that it can be difficult with limited information to say that you're certifying a document. So a little more information we've provided the commissioners on claim vouchers, but at this point, we aren't finding any resources from the state auditor's office that they would accept alternative language. In fact, I believe that your duties are set forth in statute, but I'm going to have a little bit more time to get that to you.
Okay, let me add, I had this discussion when I first got on the board of ADSWA, the Area Agency on Aging and Disabilities of Southwest Washington. And they present you a spreadsheet of many pages of expenditures, and the board is supposed to certify that. I objected, did not. I asked them to change it to approve, because what I'm approving is basically a top line view. There's no way I know whether the expenditure was faithfully represented in the real world. And so that actually held, and that is to say, it's now says approved,
So
or
Carolyn is,
whatever that's worth.
so Carolyn is correct about the state statutes applying to Diking districts. There are requirements in the state statutes that we send them to the board, and depending on the Diking district, you will see Diking districts, consolidated Diking districts, drainage districts, flood control districts, and flood control zone districts. And each of them have different laws, and the Diking and drainage are required to get them to you, the preliminary in August and their finals in September, and they are required to go to the boards. Flood control districts are slightly different, and they also are required to get to you. The timing's different. And then the flood control zone district, which in this case is Lexington, you guys do have the authority to go through and make changes on that particular budget. And that one comes to you the same time you are doing the county's budget. So there are different statutes, and we have changed the language since I've been at the county because of the approval versus certification. And we've worked through a lot of that with Doug Jensen. And so we are always looking at that on how it's appropriately done through the board.
Okay,
Thank you.
any other questions? If not, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we do approve the consent agenda presented today.
Last call for questions, comments. See none? Call for the vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
I
Also approve. Thank you. Couple motion items today. Public Works. Morning.
Morning, Commissioners. Patrick Harbison, Public Works.
Are you on?
Yeah, must not be. There we go.
Go.
Patrick Harbison, Public Works. Before you is a professional services agreement for the Toutle wastewater treatment plant improvements. This is phase one of a multi-phase project. It's one of our ARPA funded projects. It's basically multiple improvements to the wastewater treatment plant to upgrade generation, some oxidation ditch improvements, some improvements to the outfall, the effluent pumps, and some similar projects such as that. The first step in any wastewater treatment plant improvement project as required by Ecology is to do a study report, and that's this phase. The total dollar amount requested is $82,000, and that's the request for this current phase professional service agreement.
And then what's the next one after this? Because I know this is a.
Thank you. The report will recommend the exact improvements necessary, and then once that's recommended, we will come back with phase two with a scope at that point in time with the estimated cost to design that and bring that forward in phase two. That way we don't have an estimate that's 500,000 when we really only needed 200,000
Right.
at that point in time.
So remind me again, this is a study that will review different options on solving the problem and then identifying those the most cost-effective way.
Correct. An example of that is the oxidation ditch. We'll be looking at different aeration methods. And we'll be looking at the most efficient, not just installation wise, but long-term efficiency for both the electricity and that kind of stuff, labor as well, long-term wise, and determine the best option for us, both near and long-term.
Yeah. I know this is required by Ecology. Do they have to sign off on it
Yes, they do.
too, on your findings? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Any questions? Yes?
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. The county is running the water and sewer for Riderwood. And you're also providing water for this, what used to be the Camelot Trailer Park on West Side Highway. Now the county is running a wastewater treatment plant for Toutle. Is that all correct?
So we operate 5 separate water and 5 separate sewer systems throughout Cowlitz County.
And I just mentioned 3 of them, correct? What are the other 2?
So we operate, for water, we operate Riderwood, Camelot, Toutle, Toutle River View, and the gun range. For sewer, we operate 1 on International Way in the Port of Longview,
Yeah, I understand.
Riderwood, Camelot, Toutle, and Woodbrook,
Where's Woodburn?
up Ostrander Road.
And I understand the main wastewater treatment plant on International Way or Fiber Way wasn't up to standard according to a recent media publication in the Longview Daily News.
I wouldn't go that far. Number one, that is a treatment plant for Kelso Longview area.
I understand.
And the improvements to that one are both to handle solids, and our International Way goes to that one, as well as expand opportunities for solids to come to it from other agencies.
Well, according to the article, it wasn't up to standard. And this was in Saturday's Daily News.
It's operating at, it's currently operating under, it's currently operating at adequate levels currently.
Adequate, but it wasn't up to standard.
Well, it's
I
not,
think it's up to standard. There are 2 issues on the table there. There's one where they can feel with a modest investment of about 20 million or so, they can get a clarification handling with a payback that is fairly short. I don't remember the time, but it seemed like a reasonable investment. And the other 20 million or so, I'm a little, I don't know much on the details on it, but that is to increase the capacity handling there.
But before this upgrade of 20 million or so, it wasn't up to standard.
Oh, no, actually, no, it is up to standard. The other 20 million, it's, I just had a mind blank. They're trying to make a business out of processing the biosolids. So at the end, what comes out is a fertilizer product that is odorless and you're perfectly safe to put on your lawn. And they feel that they can then take biosolids from other places, bring it to their facility on Fiber Way and actually make income out of that.
Well, if
Yeah.
you're going to make a fertilizer, you should check out the programs down in Wahkiakum County that didn't come up to standard when they were placing them on agricultural fields.
Well, it is curious that everybody's an expert in these things, and we can look across the country and find failed and success and failed success. The people in charge of the plant here on fiber, the one we're talking about. I have a lot of confidence in them, so I put that concern to sleep in my book. But if you have more concerns, they'd be happy to talk to you.
Well, when you got a project that's less than 40 miles from where we sit, you know, if you three commissioners would go down there and look at it, maybe you'd have a different view.
Any other questions? Pleasure of the board.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the personal service agreement with Gibbs and Olson, Inc. for the phase 1 of the Toutle wastewater treatment plant improvements project for the total cost that will not exceed. Well, that's a very, the total cost that will not exceed $82,000. Keep my fingers crossed on that.
Any other questions, comments? Looking for hands. I don't see any. Call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Also vote aye. Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Health and Human Services.
Hey, good morning. Gina James, Health and Human Services. Let's get this right here. Okay. So the item we have in front of you today is a contract amendment with the Washington State Department of Health to our consolidated contract. This is the 9th amendment to our consolidated contract this year. This amendment is doing two things. It is adding this year's allocation for local emergency response coordinator. This is a position that works really closely with the Department of Emergency Management on local emergency planning activities. It's also just adjusting the title of one of the budget lines in a statement of work, kind of a cleanup name change. So those are the two things that this amendment is doing. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions?
Could you tell me a little bit about the Foundation Public Health Services change there?
Yes, so there's a budget line change. Let me find it really quick. There is the previous language called, there's a few different budget line categories. One of them, it's changing the name from life course, infrastructure, and workforce capacity to full life course workforce capacity. So it just changed that name slightly.
Does that have any significance in your estimation?
No. It
Okay.
has the same allowable activities underneath of it. They've just adjusted that title a little bit.
Yeah, it's often costs to make those changes. So the question is, what are we buying with that cost, even though it's maybe somewhat insignificant? There's often a message behind it, and I don't see it in this case. So I'm asking if you see any message there.
I don't, like I said, it has the same allowable activities underneath of it. So it didn't change the how you can use the funding. They're just changing that title.
And of those two changes, there is there an intended use for this $79,074?
Correct. So that is for our local emergency response
Okay,
coordinator. Yep,
and that is to pay for an FTE?
correct.
Any other questions? Lots of amendments.
This one has a lot of them.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
So this is supposed to coordinate with the Cowlitz County Department of Emergency Management, and it's another employee. I believe I heard the word aide. Is that correct?
Yes, employee.
How many besides the director of the Cowlitz County Emergency Management Department are employed with Cowlitz County Emergency Management Department? Besides the director?
Yeah, I should know, but I don't. I think is an additional individual, but I don't think this is adding an individual. This is paying the salary of the individual already there. I'm thinking.
Yes.
Not
that's correct.
certain.
Okay,
Yeah,
That's correct.
so what's, you don't know the total number of employees in that department?
I think what is 3.5, something like that. It's not very big.
it's the director and
Captain Larry
Communications.
Hembry? Is he-
yeah, it's Larry Embry and it
And
used to
you'll-
be,
Who's the third?
it used to be 3 people
Yeah.
and I haven't kept up with it.
So it's the third person who will be the aide, I take it.
No, as I've said many times, money is fungible. I don't know that this is earmarked for specific individual A. It is used to fund the position that's occupied by,
An aide,
yeah,
besides the three already there.
no. Of the 3 there, this will pay for for one of the 2 that is not the director.
One of the three, in other words.
Well, 2 are not directors, but yes.
Okay. That's all I had.
You were gonna add something?
I just was gonna say, it is an existing position that works really closely. They're not stationed or under the Department of Emergency Management. They're Health and Human Services, but they work really closely
Oh,
with the Department of Emergency
That's
Management.
right.
we knew it wasn't adding a person unless you were being very tricky.
Any other questions, comments? See none?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the contract amendment with the Washington State Department of Health as presented by staff.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor, last chance. Okay, I call for a vote. Those in favor,
Aye.
Aye.
also vote aye. Thank you, Gina.
Okay, thank you.
Couple updates for you before we open to the public. Work sessions, we did some budget workshop stuff yesterday. We have some more this afternoon at 1:30. It looks like list I'm seeing is prosecuting attorney, clerk courthouse, district court is what we're going to tackle this afternoon. Okay, so if you have interest in budget stuff, that's what's on this afternoon. Tomorrow, the 20th, at our 1:30 meeting, I mentioned last week, we have a affordable housing presentation. Basically what we got coming in is Habitat for Humanity. We're just going to have a discussion with them, what they do, see if there's any avenues the county has to help them put people in homes. And then the Community House on Broadway is going to come in and give us an update on their youth shelter that they got funding from the state on. So that's tomorrow afternoon. With that, just a reminder again, in about 15 minutes, we go to a closed public hearing, but till that time, it's open floor. It's all yours.
You printed it upside down. You printed it upside down.
I don't work for the federal government.
Apparently you're eligible.
I've already been there, Commissioner. I'd like this entered into today's record. September 19th, 2023, a statement by a citizen of Cowlitz County, Washington State of the United States. The Governor and Attorney General of the State of Washington, respectively, Jay Inslee and Bob Ferguson, have attacked a citizen of Cowlitz County, violating Mr. Wertz's Second Amendment civil rights to the Constitution of the United States. Mr. Inslee and Ferguson have both taken an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States, of which they and the state of Washington are a part, against all enemies, foreign and domestic. This body, the Cowlitz County Commissioners, have written a resolution supporting the principles of the Second Amendment and a resolution to this effect, as have their voting in the 2023 session, the Washington State Legislature, all Republican Party legislators representing Cowlitz County. What do you all intend to do now in consideration of this attack on Mr. Wentz's and his Second Amendment rights, in all respect to all of your oaths of your office to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign or domestic, presented by Mr. Steve J. Dragich, Cowlitz County, Washington State. Mind you, I'll add this at the end. I've been a Democrat for over 40 years. And both these gentlemen who represent the state of Washington as governor and attorney general are the worst I've ever seen in 40 years. That's all I have to say.
So
Steve, I want to point out that you do have a fairly critical misspelling in your document. I'm pretty sure you meant 2023 session of the State of Washington Legislature. You wrote in secession, which may be a goal you have, but
I'm glad you pointed that out, Commissioner Weber. I'm glad you noticed that. Because I have an ulterior motive in that word. I put that in there specifically.
Yeah.
As bait.
I took it.
You did. But here's my point. President John, he was Samuel Adams' son.
Quincy.
John Quincy.
Quincy
Okay.
Adams. In the defense of a slave ship, which a United States Navy man of war captured, handling several hundred slaves. And he defended these slaves before the United States Supreme Court. And he won, amazingly, being they were all Southerners on the United States Supreme Court, 8-1. And you could see it in the movie, which was very accurate. One statement he made at the end, while he was viewing his father's statue bust in the Supreme Court chambers, he concluded with this remark, and it's a lot closer than most people think. He said, "If it be civil war, let it come." Let me tell you, it's pretty scary out there, especially in this county.
The only objection I have is I'm not so sure it's just this county, but
It isn't.
good. Okay. I would say this is one of the more important things that is going on. And it's not an attack on Mr. Wentz himself. This is an attack on all of us. And so I think we need to take that into consideration. I do not know what the disposition of my colleagues are, and I'm not even sure what in the realm of risk versus stakes options we have available to us. I would, with permission of the other two commissioners, want to talk this over with our prosecuting attorney's office. Because we have in the past been asked to join various lawsuits. It's typically other counties that are suing, say, the drug companies. They say, do you want to join us in the lawsuit? Well, this may be the kind of thing where we could actually spin up other counties joining us in a lawsuit or as an amicus brief with Mr. Wentz's particular suit. Anyhow,
Yeah, I think that's I think it'd be a good conversation to have. Yeah, absolutely.
okay, thank you.
I think we still stand by the resolution that we passed, that we support those principles of the Second Amendment. We do have some limitations. We don't enforce the law. I mean, obviously, the Attorney General can file the suits and so on, but I think we're very concerned.
So let me up the ante a little bit for this discussion. It may seem like we've got a bunch of staff members at the prosecuting attorney's office just hoping that we get something for them to do. No, they're very, very occupied. There's a cost involved with this. And sometimes we have to hire outside counsel also. I'm in favor of whatever it costs, but I just thought I'd throw that out.
Can I make one last comment on costs?
You have to come up.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I assume Commissioner Mortensen, you're talking about legal fees. Let me tell you my family's costs. Going back to the last Civil War. Isaac Lawhon, 139th Indiana Infantry Volunteer Union. Isaac Hall was the Union infantryman. Isaac Lawhon was the Confederate cavalryman. Their costs, Isaac Hall received a mini ball in his ankle. Thankfully, it passed through. Isaac Lawhon lost all the fingers on one of his hands from a saber cut. Those are real costs.
Individually, tremendous cost, but we're in a position where we have to judge everything by what I would call the expected value of good outcome for the citizens of the county. That's the outcome tomorrow and the outcome for the next foreseeable years. And that may give a different solution. I hope people will come to their senses before what you mentioned will happen. I think everybody hopes for that. So anyhow, let's hope we don't have a mini ball flying around.
Yeah. I would concur, the costs of to the citizens and the rights and the unalienable rights and the freedoms that we have. I don't know that you can put a price tag on it. So this kind of stuff needs to be fought. So I'm not opposed to having a conversation with them and doing that. Seeing what the options are. Any other things from the audience? You have a couple minutes. Okay.
Well, on a totally different topic.
Yeah.
But one that deals with Mr. Draggage. I hope that you enjoyed your time at the Longview Centennial. You looked like you were having a lot of fun. Mr. Dragic came dressed up pretty convincingly as Mr. Ari Long and kind of wowed everybody, particularly the Master of Ceremonies, who was also dressed up as Mr. Long. So there was a twin situation, but it was a lot of fun. It was good evening. I hope you enjoyed that.
We could make a TV show to that. Will the real Mr. Long please stand up?
Yeah.
Interesting point, in Kansas City, bloody Kansas. He was born after the Civil War, or
1850.
yeah, before. He was about 10 years old when it started. But the interesting part about that, he was a Southern sympathizer, and Civic Center in Longview is really Jefferson Center. And I won't tell you which general that was named after.
So I would propose that we sometime have a history class and you and I, Mr. Chairman, sit there and.
I know.
Mr. Dragic-
Stephen,
We'll let
These two
Commissioner
gentlemen.
Weber and Mr. Dragich teach us.
He
was
was
a
a civics teacher. I'm an engineer.
Yeah.
Well, I'm partial to engineers. So continuing, Mr. Dragic, could you define for us what engineering is? That's a nasty question.
Let me see. It was Professor Hopkins. I'm School of Forestry, not proper engineering. According to him, and this is 45 years ago, the proper application of industrial principles in the advancement of
My apologies.
civil as in civil engineering welfare. He had the PhD, I did.
Yeah, no, I look for, you probably gathered from my statements, I look for sort of an overarching principle. I like to think of something akin to finding the universal equation, if you will. But engineering is actually, anybody can be an engineer. It is the statement of a goal, and it's the contention of resources available to achieve the goal. And so an engineer negotiates the scarcity of resources in order to achieve the goal or modify the goal, which is very different than being a scientist. So as a scientist, you sit back in your armchair and you scratch your head and you think, I wonder what it's like up in Jupiter. It's a planet, maybe it looks like Earth, maybe not. So they're bothered by things that most of us are only concerned. Look at the call, the ball was out and he called it in. I'm going to fix that problem.
His best statement, Professor Hopkins, he was retiring that year that I started as a freshman. And the whole auditorium, and there was over 200 people in it, all stood up and clapped on this statement. And he pointed to the whole class and he said, you people may be professionally trained to do the assignment, but you won't make the decisions. And after 45 years, boy, was he right.
Okay. I think we burned up time at 9:45. We want to head into that closed public hearing. Just a reminder on closed public hearings. Not necessarily saying I agree with it, but if you haven't testified on these before, you're not allowed to testify here. Okay.
Good morning, Commissioners. Tracy Jackson, Director of Building and Planning. I have staff shortage today, so you get me today. In front of you today is a request to amend a portion of the Cowlitz County Comprehensive Land Use Designation Map containing the subject properties from small holding to rural. A change to rural land use category will reduce the minimum lot size guideline from 5 acres down to 2 acres. The proponents, the owner is Lower Columbia Properties LLC. The agent for the owner is Chilton Development Services. A comprehensive plan map amendment and request to lift the moratorium on development according to Cowlitz County Code 1720-100 on approximately 16 acres out in the Coal Creek area designated small holding under the 2017 comprehensive plan. This proposal will change 2 parcels to the rural designation. The property is an unzoned land use district under Cowlitz County Code 1810. Development of properties in the unzoned use district must be consistent with performance standards, and lots must be consistent with the mandatory minimums as per the comprehensive plan guidelines and recommended acreages. This encompasses permit number 2305343 and any associated permit with that. The location of the proposal is 121 Carlin Loop Road. It is parcel WL02030001 and WL02030006. We issued a SEPA in June. We had no appeal towards the submitted SEPA and comments thereof. It was taken in front of the planning application August 16th, this last month, and it was 7-0 vote to recommend the.
Did you say planning commission?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Did I not? I might not have.
Quite understand.
It went to planning commission this last August, last month. And it was a 7-0 vote to bring the application forward. And that being said, the amendment area application has demonstrated consistency with the comprehensive plan adopted goals and policies for the rural land use designation. The conditions have shown to since the comprehensive plan was put in place, the designation looks like it it shows that it has changed, and a rural designation is now more appropriate designation for that area. So taking it from 5 acres down to 2 acres on the 16-acre development means they could do a maximum of 8 homes in that development area. So the applicant is here. If the board has any questions, but we're recommending with the entire case file and everything that the project's been through, that we put on file with the department, the Board of County Commissioners, and we recommend approval of the comprehensive plan designation change.
Just a couple of perfunctory questions. The SEPA policy window now is a month.
I'm sorry.
Before we would give people 2 weeks notice. We noticed SEPA and then you
It's-
say you've got 2 weeks to respond.
They did. It was issued June 30th and the comments were due July 14th.
Okay, and our new operating process is a month. Is that not true?
I believe so, yes.
That's not a good enough answer.
I know. It's changed recently.
Well, you make the with our approval, you make the policy, and we've been asking for a month for quite a while.
Planning department has been working on doing the 30-day comment period.
Okay. That did not apply here, though.
That's correct.
Okay, but even within the 2-week window, you received no comments.
The comments that we received did not mean nobody appealed the SEPA comments. Nobody appealed the SEPA for this project designation. We had some comments from Planning Commission about some possible traffic issues, but those can be addressed when and if the project is developed.
Okay, so this is just a zoning change.
That's correct.
And then I'm always curious about the chained events because this is really done with the intent of. If we were doing the planning commission document from start, we might put this into the rural designation just because that's what we thought at the time. So that makes our designation to that somewhat arbitrary, but when you change it, that means you've got something in mind. This doesn't mean we endorse a development there.
Correct. We're just giving them an opportunity to develop it down to 2 acres if they choose. Right now, they could only do 2 homes with the small holding designation.
Yeah, I just interrupt myself. It's always difficult because we really want to support property rights there, and that area is pretty well undeveloped, isn't it, around there?
There are homes out there, but they're on acreage. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and the increasing number of homes out there is the indication that there's a change from large holdings to more rural residential.
Okay, and just the more perfunctory question, how much does the forget the term for the individual asking for the change? How much are they paying as a fee?
It's about $5,000.
Okay,
And that's just for the application process. There's the SEPA is additional.
okay.
And then any subdivision or any development they would do would be in addition to that.
Just to review it for the citizenry, that's because the applicant wants to change that now as opposed to asking the planning commission to change it and having that done on a quarterly basis, possibly.
The comp plan amendment, we would
Yeah.
have to, it would be more than a quarter. I mean, we do those, it took us 30 years to get our comp plan updated prior to the one that is currently existing.
But just to recall, we did say that if we decided a comp change, we meaning the administration, if you
Mhm.
will, was the right thing to do, there would be no fee involved.
Correct.
Okay.
We would take it forward as an administrative change.
I think those are all the questions I have. Thank you.
So, Tracy, you mentioned that the property is currently in an unzoned zone, and the proposal is to change that into a zone,
Correct.
or is it just the comp plan change?
It's the comp plan change.
So it's not a zoning change, so it will remain
It will remain
Unzoned,
unzoned,
which
but the
is a-
minimum lot size will go down to 2 acres.
okay,
Correct.
okay, that's what,
Yep.
because
It will
sometimes we
remain
get
unzoned.
confused. We're
Yep.
just looking at a change in the comp plan.
Correct.
So if the decision is made to go forward with, say, the maximum development would be 8, as you mentioned, 8 homes, would those homes have to be extensively reviewed under subdivision rules, or they can do it one at a time or all together?
It depends on how the application came in. I don't know what the applicant's intent is.
As
going
long
forward.
as long as the new lots all have access
They meet the
to a
minimum lot
road so
size,
that
they
the
have
fire protection is
access.
secured.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
So it's a different process. For example, once this is done, there could be a short plat that
Mhm.
puts lots.
Mhm.
And then I could buy an individual lot there and build my own house to my own specs, and that would fall under one category. But if a developer says, I'm going to build 8 houses here, then they go through a different process. Is
Correct.
that right?
Mhm.
And that ties into something that we have yet to discuss, what changes you're recommending. And
Yeah.
I don't recall them totally offhand, but I thought they were all well placed and we should
Yeah.
get on with that as soon as
Sure.
possible.
Trying to, as you put it, and I had fun with this yesterday, I call it being more efficient. You're a computer guy, you call it latency issues, so.
Yeah.
I've been up and looked at this place. There actually was an existing home up there, so that the driveway into it isn't anything new. It's been there. It's gonna house some more homes out of there, and it is on that curve, if you're familiar with Carlin Loop, and it's kind of sharp there, but you know, we have those kind of issues all over the county, and when I looked at it and I listened to it at Planning Commission, the only concerns that I had that people came up with, well, there's a gentleman next door that was worried about the quality of the homes that might be built, might affect the value of his home. And then there was maybe two, maybe three people just concerned about that curve and traffic. And I get that, but that can be addressed a little bit if we get to the other point. It all made sense to me. I didn't have any issues with it. It's one of those things as I said yesterday, you could have brought it to us last month and it'd be done and over with and they'd be on their way. We can open up, if there's any public hearing, we can open that up. I don't know if I see anybody here that commented the last, come on up. Yeah. Yeah, come on up.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Bryce Devine, and I'm the guy that lives directly next door to this property. There's three areas that I have concerns over. One is traffic on that corner. Another is property values, of course. And the third is salmon in the creek.
I'm sorry, the third is what?
Salmon. That
Oh.
is a spawning area for three species of salmonids, which are Chinook, fall Chinook, coho salmon, as well as steelhead, winter steelhead. But first, I'd like to talk about the traffic. I think that's probably a major concern. When you come from Coal Creek Road onto Carlin Loop Road, you come to a bridge, and directly across that bridge is a property. If you've been there, you've seen it. It starts into a curve. It's a slight uphill grade on the bridge. It starts into a curve that's slightly more than 90 degrees, with the entrance to this property being straight ahead. And you cannot, until you're about a third of a way around that curve and committed to a left turn, you can't see down the road. It's quite hazardous, and I think that we need to consider that this 16 acres is part of an 80-acre holding. And a major development, the traffic that it would create would be extremely hazardous. I think that you figure that there's like 10 trips a day per house. And so the full development of the property of the 80 acres would be about 20 houses if it's left at the designation. If this is modified to 2-acre parcels on the 16 acres, that leaves 60 more acres. So however you calculate it out, I would expect that the applicant would want to reduce the rest of the property, a rural holding as well. So that's going to be a long-term problem. And I drive through that intersection every day, as well as a lot of other people. And I've had a couple near misses of people cutting the corner and so forth, but there's really not a lot of traffic out there, but you're introducing a lot of traffic. So I think that it would be hazardous, and I don't know what the remedy would be. It's not wide enough for a left turn lane there, but that's what's needed. And so I guess moving on to the property value thing, the house that exists on the property is probably a 60s or 70s era house. It's not a bad house, but from their plat map, what they've designated would, I think, significantly reduce the potential value of that house. And that's the lot that's next door to mine. And it's as such would affect the value of my house. I have no idea what the rest of the development would look like. They say median homes. I mean, well, when you consider that a double wide mobile home, which there's nothing wrong with a modular home. That's probably what I would buy if I was starting out today, but they're quite a bit less value. I think it would would detract from the potential value of my home. And I've already spoken pretty much about the fish issue. We continue to develop in these areas where we do a lot of digging and especially the real problem is after the development is done, what happens on private property. Enforcement can't get there, and this creek is closed to fishing during the fall when the salmon are migrating, but I live out there and most of the people that live there have kids and most of them don't know. They're not active fishermen. They don't follow the regulations and it's not posted. When you're on private property, there's no enforcement. So, and given these reasons, and given the fact that this was purchased by the applicant as a small holding, I don't see any compelling public reason to change that designation. And I guess that's my comments, and I've commented on the SEPA, and I've commented every stage I had an opportunity. So thank you again for the opportunity.
Yeah.
Hello, Commissioners. Nick Little, Chilton Development Services, representing the applicant. I am the applicant, I guess, representing the landowner, who is here in attendance today as well. So thank you, Tracy, for giving us a brief overview of the project. I'll keep this fairly simple and fairly sweet. The total ownership of the property is 80 acres. 16 of that 80, or it's 81 technically, 16 of that 80 is the subject. So the remaining 75 acres would be continued to be held in timber property. So everything to this point has been looking at developing the 16 acres. That additional acreage, 75 acres, that is south of the property, has some pretty serious issues when it comes to trying to do any sort of development on it. You just south of this property, you cross a creek, and then you begin climbing up to where would be any feasible building sites. Except by the grace of God, I don't think you're going to get a road up there to meet any sort of county standards. Private road standards, 15% max grade. In certain situations, you can vary that by working with Public Works to get it to a 17. We're talking 17 to 21% for this road and no real way to catch that slope. There is areas south of the creek that could have additional lots, but that's remaining in 5 acres and you're looking at maybe 15 acres. The majority of the property just isn't suitable for further development. So it's largely going to be held in timber at this point, which is kind of another reason that prompted this amendment. It gave us more logical lot layouts and it preserves quite a significant amount of acreage on the south side. So when you count in the cost of going through all this, getting more attractive lots that aren't spaghettied all over the place, and then the land that you save on the south side of the creek for future timber value, it's kind of a no-brainer. The goal to go to the 2-acre designation was not chosen lightly. So the area directly to the north of this is 2 acres. There's timberland to the east, and then everything up to this point on Coal Creek and the beginning of Carlin Loop Road is actually suburban residential. So it is not developed at homes on large pieces of property. You can drive up Coal Creek, the homes are on relatively smaller lots, 2 acres or less in some cases, many cases actually. Not even with public water, they're trying to go to a suburban designation, create zone issues. It creates a serious number of those. First one's volume. When we start talking about all these different traffic issues, trying to go to such a dense designation for this property becomes problematic because now not only your impact's higher, your mitigation's higher, everything becomes more difficult. So ultimately, the development standard you develop to is an urban one. So we're talking base county standards require streetlights, sidewalks. And while a lot of this area is suburban residential, I don't think anybody, including the landowners, want to see streetlights on Coal Creek Road. not where this is at. So it seemed a logical approach to go to this, to clean up lot lines, move basically our density to the north side of the creek, and move on. So, real quick, as far as the traffic issues, there's a number of things that are being done, that will be done with the subsequent development of the 16 acres. And one of those is the conversion of that driveway to a private road. Part of that's going to include two important things. First is the roads being adjusted slightly. So we'll increase sight distance for both those leaving and those entering the property. And as well as on the other side of the road, there's an opportunity to clean up some of that, bring down some grades. There is a little bit of ownership over there as well as county right of way to increase that sight distance for people making a left turn into it. So these issues aren't issues that have been ignored. They've been addressed through design. And we do have a full private road design and all the appropriate permitting in to complete that. That's currently in review at the department. So
Nick, you mentioned that you're going to turn a road into private road. You're not talking about Carlin Loop.
correct,
But the
correct.
driveway-
The driveway
the
going
current
to the
driveway.
right, the driveway going to the property went past the house, bends to the south, then goes into, basically becomes a timber road at that point. So the private road would be from the intersection with Carlin Loop Road around that first corner, where it hammerheads and the driveway goes up the hill in the 16 acres to serve the remaining homes. So that road is, the design's in review with Public Works right now. There's also a shorelines permit in with that as well to bring in the water line, the power and everything else to serve all the property.
So you mentioned public water, that's City of Longview.
It is City of Long Beach, correct?
So they have a line that goes up Coal Creek right now.
Yes.
Do
And
they have
Carlin
one on
Loop, yeah.
Carlin also?
Yeah. So we'll be able to connect right there and bring it in. So part of the other reason to do this is the owners are interested in preserving the creek. And I'm probably better to hear from them if you would like to hear more of the details. But essentially a big part of this was keeping a chunk of the property that is south of Coal Creek. So Coal Creek comes down and it makes a big kind of a double loop in there. The 16, and the reason this was adjusted the way it was and chosen was everything north of Coal Creek, right? Basically north and west. Inside of those curves is there's a lot of wetland, there's a lot of habitat, local habitat companies frequently use that as a kind of a nursery to get clippings and cuttings so they can create mitigation plantings elsewhere in the county. So there is a desire to protect that. So going through this, it kind of pulls, I guess, compared to the way they would develop the property, if none of this were to happen, they get to pull a lot of that area and keep it under their ownership and keep it from being divided up into a bunch of different people who just go down there and put pavilions on the creek bank and things like that. So future development after this, whether it's a subdivision or any other method of developing the property, it always comes down to the same basic things. Do you have, and whether it's formalized through a subdivision or whether it's simply developing existing lots, you're providing adequate access, you're providing adequate water, you're providing adequate septic, and you're dealing with any critical areas that may be on the site. So to this point, we've done habitat assessments for the road and all the impacts. The road itself provides access. We know we have water. We have not submitted formal soils tests, but we have had a designer to the site who has, that is trusted by the landowner and myself to tell us what we've got, right? You don't want to jump into something like this without knowing what your septic is going to be, because that's a big change in dollar signs. So I think that pretty much wraps up what I had to say. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. Here to answer any questions if you have them.
I do share just because I've been around that corner, I do share concerns on that. So I'm glad to hear you have some as you develop down the road, and I don't know that it's wide enough to put a turn lane in. As the gentleman says, I agree, a turn lane is what's needed, but I don't think they have the room there to do that. So whatever can be done is certainly appreciated. Go ahead.
So that serves as a good admonition for the future. We will be looking at that pretty carefully when the plans come out.
Yeah, that'll be filed way here because I have seen it and I do understand that concern and you can't see around that corner very well and I'm sure we can get creative, find a way to fix that, but or to make it.
Yeah, good morning. Chris Wills. I currently live in Silver Lake and have lived in Cowlitz County nearly all my life. I'd like to read from this and then hopefully address a couple of comments. I'm here speaking as a member of Lower Columbia Properties. Commissioners, thank you for allowing me to take the time to speak on behalf of LCP regarding the decision before you today. I first want to recognize that your jobs are difficult. Daily, you must make decisions for our county to guide us into the future. My hope is that the materials presented, the rationale, thought process, and our vision will guide you to make a vote to approve this proposed action today. You have a lot of materials before you, and some of you were fortunate to have been briefed on it during the previous planning meeting. The intent of speaking today is an attempt to distill the information in front of you and help provide context of alternatives that we as landowners have been faced with. After purchasing the property in spring of 2022, we met with the county staff to understand how we may use this property. And this might get to your, one of the earlier questions. Comprehensive plan amendment was proposed to either be done concurrent with the typical or historical path forward and when it's done, or you can apply as an applicant. When we spoke with planning staff, we were informed that there was public water there, or they were informed that water was there and they were unaware of that. So in the historical context, this property was used as a learning center. And for those reasons, it was designated a small holding, but the adjacent properties just to the north of it are either zoned, designated rural or suburban, both of which are smaller than the small holdings. So had they known that it was no longer functioning as a learning center, which it stopped doing that about 8 years ago, it most likely would have been updated or potentially would have been updated. So we've continued to work with the planning department along with other city and county service providers. We just talked about the city of Longview. They've confirmed they have water availability. And through this work, we feel confident that our application to change the plan is consistent with the comprehensive plan. The decision to approve this proposal to rural designation will result in a more orderly, efficient, and well-designed lot configuration as demonstrated inside of that packet for what we would be forced to do. One thing that Nick did talk about is the current configuration as we propose it, if there is a designation change, would allow us to protect a significant amount of shoreline that would otherwise be potentially developable and would be required financially for us to do that. So we're really actually looking at creating a nonprofit to protect that and to continue a forest learning opportunity and partner with one of the local water, it's called Watershed Gardens, I believe it is, out of Longview, who has historically collected plants and seeds on the property. So for those reasons, I would ask that you approve this. And if you have any questions, I can answer that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know that there was any others that testified. I don't think we have anybody online. Close the public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I do feel the need to do a certain amount of disclosure. My wife was one of the teachers out at Wake Robin, and I'm pretty familiar with that site, so I've been there before. However, I don't believe that is influencing me on this particular proposal, but I want to make sure that connection is in the record.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the comprehensive plan amendment for 121 Carlin Loop Road as has been presented.
Okay. We've had comment, so I just call for the vote.
Well, I did want to make
Sure.
just a comment. We traditionally put an awful lot of stock in the proceedings of the planning commission, their decisions. They're the ones that work with the public and have public open meetings. And the fact that it was a pretty unanimous decision, gives me the confidence to support the proposal. Of course, it does mean we trust that the planning department will continue to address those important items that were, discussed during those public hearings, and the developers are more than willing to address those. So I will support.
Yeah, it's, I think the last gentleman that spoke acknowledged some of the decisions are fairly complicated or difficult. I count very heavily on the planning commission, not so much for a check the box, which is what they did here, but to go through the SEPA comments, understand what it means to the environment around there, because even though I'm a strong proponent of it's your property, you do with it as you would like, what you do affects your neighbors. And I think that was part of a discussion I had with them at one time. And but in this case, I think everything's fine.
You gentlemen have more confidence in that commission than I do. But we have a motion on there, so I call for the vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Also vote aye. Passes. Thank you.
You weren't really suggesting that I'm more optimistic than you.
I
assume.
think I'm suggesting that.
Really, that's
Yeah.
a first, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I
Well, you're just a young fellow.
I have confidence in the staff that implements the decision that we just made.
Oh,
They're the ones
that
are
wasn't,
gonna do it.
the staff, I'm totally
Yeah.
fine with. I think some of the other stuff, well, I don't need to get into it.
Well,
I've told you, I think it's
yeah.
inefficient or it has latency issues, as you put it.
Once the, yeah,
Yeah.
we should get that addressed.
Yeah.
But it is true that there is an issue for traffic and,
Yeah, it is. There's no way around it. It just happens to be on that corner and it sounds like they have some stuff to address it, and it'll be filed away and I'll look at it as it comes through the next time around, but that's not unusual in different parts of our county where there's traffic issues that we have to deal with.
to add the left-hand turn lane, we could just say all cars there have to be the dimensions of a smart car.
Well,
That's
just,
a joke, folks. This is like
yeah,
how the Soviet Union would
because
do
it drops
something.
off you got the creek, you just don't have a lot of room.
Yeah.
Room there. It's physical layout of the land. Any other public? We can. Okay. See none. I see no hands raised. We will adjourn. We'll be back at 1:30 with some budget items. Thank you.
Thanks.